Well, I want to bring in Jeff Jarvis now. He's the author of What Would Google Do, for his take on Google's big buy. Jeff, let me ask you, I'm getting sort of mixed responses here. Did this come as a complete surprise to you?
Oh, yes, I think the industry is shocked by this. But then in hindsight of 10 minutes, looking back and saying, well, no, it makes sense given the current atmosphere. What's really a shame about this, I think that it's mainly a commentary on how pathetically messed up our patent system is. That $12.5 billion are going not to innovation and invention and creation, but instead to defending against lawyers.
So tell me, how does this help them from that situation? How does this help Google from their patent situation, acquiring Motorola Mobility?
Well, it gives Google a war chest of patents they can use to fight against the other guy's patents, and it becomes a theory of mass destruction, of mutual self-destruction. And we've already seen statements this morning from the other manufacturers in the Android world, HTC, Sony Ericsson, and LG, welcoming this, because what it means is that Google is defending Android and thus them against Apple and other manufacturers like Nokia. The irony here is that to do this, Google has to go compete with the people it supplies. It puts them into a position of channel conflict, and it puts Google into a business it should not be in. It should not be in the manufacturing business, but it had to be in the patent buying business, which is a shame.
Jeff, so in pre-market trading, I'm taking a look at Google. The stock is down. Clearly, investors, at least their initial reaction, not so positive. Does this ultimately help Google in the long term in any way? I mean, putting the question of patent morality and spending this much money on patent protection or having a patent fight, does this ultimately help them?
Well, in the last 2 weeks, the stock going up or down may indicate that the moon rose funny, so God knows what that means. But I think it does help Google in the long run. You're right, putting aside those moral questions, because mobile is a huge part of the future of Google's business. Eric Schmidt said last year that every one of the strategic initiatives that he saw on Google's future for this year was mobile. And mobile itself is going to become a meaningless word as we become connected everywhere all the time through devices of all sorts. So if you think about Google TV, or if you think about a Google refrigerator, or all these things, and the ability that gives Google to get more signals about who we are, what we want, what we're doing, so it can target its services and advertising, that's where the strategic value of mobile becomes huge for Google.
Jeff, does this change perhaps your expectations for other deals that Google may be doing in the future? I mean, $12.5 billion is a big number, but not so big given what they have sitting on the sidelines.
Well, yeah, and you have Apple with more money than the U.S. For a while. A few weeks ago, you've got a lot of cash sitting out there. Again, I wish that money, that capital, were going to innovation and creation of companies like Google and Apple and products that they've made. It would be a shame if it went to a bunch of card playing with lawyers at the center.
Let me ask you a question. The premium, 63% premium to Friday's close. Does that seem warranted to you? Does that seem on the high side?
Google has to make this preemptive. They got blocked out of the Nortel deal. This time they've just got to go ahead and get a bunch of patents and swallow the medicine and then sit there like a fat Cheshire cat and say, okay, come sue us, we'll sue you.
And how does it change the competitive landscape from the competitors' perspective of Google?
Don't forget that Android is a free operating system, and people can do incredible things with Android. We've just seen the beginning of it. Look at what Apple did by taking a phone operating system and making it into a tablet. Android followed along with its own tablets, but there'll be other things that an open operating system in the hands of many, many companies and creative people can do. So what this really is not about Google going into the phone business to compete. They were already in the phone business with the Google phone, and they got out of it. They're not necessarily great at that, and Motorola has been kind of declining. What this does is not only give them patents, but it also strengthens Android as an open operating system, and that allows it to explode, and that puts it in a great competitive position against Apple.
What does this mean for Apple? I know you haven't written the book, What Would Apple Do, but what do you expect them to do given this announcement?
Well, Apple violates every single one of the rules that I came up with out of Google. I think that Apple continues to do what it does. Apple makes incredibly good products, very closed products in a closed ecosystem, and I think it becomes, just as it did in the PC world, much more of a niche, but a huge niche that made the largest company in the world. So I don't say that to demean Apple in the slightest. I think that that's what makes them great, and Google has just a very different strategy now.
So does this, how quickly does this accelerate their ability to take market share from Apple?
it makes the path they were on safer. What they were doing was getting a whole bunch of manufacturers to take Android, but those manufacturers were getting sued by the likes of Apple. By using Android, they were in some risk and some jeopardy. So now that they have more confidence that they won't be sued or that there's a defense against such suit, then I think we'll see more manufacturers using Android in more ways and not being so afraid of Apple and Nokia and Microsoft.
All right, and tell me this. I don't know if you follow Icon closely, but about the Icon factor here. What's your perspective on that? Do you think they've been in talks for a long time now?
I can't say much about that.
All right, let me ask you on Google itself. I mean, we were waiting. We just saw on the reasons why. We saw a brief blurb, I think it was on the blog. We saw reasons as to why Google was doing that. Do you expect them to perhaps have a press conference today or make a bigger statement about the rationale for this deal?
The great thing about Google is they've already done it. They own Blogger, and Larry Page put up a blog post. That's the way the world works now. Who needs press conferences when you can talk to the whole darn world?
All right, Jeff, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for joining us this early morning. Thanks so much. That was Jeff Jarvis, the author of What Would Google Do? And even Jeff was a bit surprised by what the announcement this morning of the large acquisition Motorola Mobility